Warrior episode 55. My name is Jamil Raymond. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here as always. On this week's ep, we are continuing this four-part series on King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, a fantastic book by Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette, which is a guide, a spiritual guide to the mature masculine archetype, something that you, as a masculine man or, as a woman that wants to understand the masculine better, a great map to understand what a good, strong, mature masculine man is, how you can embody this in your own life, what are the great examples that we can use from the past and from society to make you a big, strong, muscly, mature man. I don't know if you have to be muscly, but it certainly helps. So this week we are talking about the magician archetype, my personal favorite for a variety of reasons, which we will unpack in the oncoming episode. I just said oncoming because it's been a very long day, and to be quite honest with you folks, it's the second time I've recorded this podcast because your boy recorded this entire podcast with the wrong microphone. I have two of these fuckers. If you are watching on YouTube, you'll see two little fucker microphones. And the entire time, last night when I recorded this podcast, I fucking had the wrong mic the entire time. Even worse, I had the wrong microphone in my hand, saw the right one, and was like, I don't need this, and then chucked it away. Little did I know that it was the correct one, because you can't see if it's tracking or anything on the microphone. And then I tried to salvage the footage, salvage the clip yesterday, but the audio was just so fucking shit. So here we go, part two. It's been a long day as I re-record this, so if I drop a few words here and there, you'll know why. As I like to say on this podcast, I am running out of brain. I just fucked up saying podcast. Whew, this is going to be a fun episode. So let's get into it, shall we? So, the magician. Who is the magician in the mature masculine archetypes? The magician is the dimension of the masculine that is obsessed with inner knowledge and the mastery of tools and technology. Right? The magicians, also known in society as the shamans, the elder, the medicine men, these are the men that love to seek knowledge of the unconscious and immaterial worlds, the things we cannot see in front of us. They love to carry wisdom of the ages down through their lineage and are more connected to the whispers and the nuances of the spiritual world. Magicians are needed by society to bring guidance to others. Knowledge is their domain, is their expertise. And in society, particularly older cultures, magicians were the initiators of others into their own masculine maturity. You think of the medicine man in a tribe or the shaman, which we'll talk about a bit later on. These are those slightly kooky, off to the side elders that know the depths of the world around them, the immaterial. They, are connected to the great spirits. And, maybe they talk in rhymes. Maybe they're a bit of a druid and they've got cool potions and medicines and, all these little doohickeys and little knickknacks to change and influence perception, reality, culture. Even though the magician is a master of technology, of medicine, of knowledge, because he is aware of the immense power of his wisdom and his capabilities, good magicians are always students of their arts, right? They know that they're just initiates and they don't try to put themselves above their knowledge, above these higher powers of wisdom that enable them to be embodied in the everyday life. Because as we talked about with the king, if you get beyond your place in the hierarchy, if you put yourself beyond God and beyond these sacred powers that are imbued into us as people, shit happens for the worse. You got to respect where you are in the hierarchy of life and of consciousness in the universe. And because he respects this art, this immense power, he knows how much it can impact others. He understands when to use it and when not to use it. Similarly, when we talked about the warrior, a warrior versus a hero, a warrior knows his limitations. He's a lot more measured about the way he approaches things. Same with the magician. The magician is, if probably, the deepest thinker, right? The person that sits back, assesses, understands what's going on. They take a second to allow their knowledge to contextualize in a situation and allow their wisdom and the insight to bubble to the surface. It's not immediate. Where the magician and the warrior differ is that the magician is the deep thinker and the warrior is the doer. And it's also important to remember that these archetypes, these four archetypes, they're not individuals, right? They are elements of the whole. So you will be, even if you are a fantastic magician, you will always be leveraging your warrior energy to act and to be disciplined and be focused. You'll be leveraging your king to be generative and kind and to be working in the common interest of all. And you might be leveraging the lover to be connected to that source, to the, to feel and to have the connectedness to people and to work for their benefit, right? Because the magician is this deep thinker and this observant individual, within our own psyches, he is the observing eye, right? He is that voice inside you that we've kind of talked about in the past that knows better. It knows better in a situation when you're fucking something up, right? He's that voice inside your head that goes, should you really be doing this? Right? That observant understanding of the knowledge of the outcomes that could happen often can diverge from what we actually do because as individuals we're probably caught up in the energy of a moment, a situation. Maybe we are too caught up in our own trauma and our own bullshit to see reality for what it really is. But that wizard energy, if we channel it, I said wizard because I like being a fucking wizard. I forgot to mention that I'm wearing a classic sweet ass robe for the YouTubers. Worth a look. It's fucking loud. But, fuck, I really just put myself off again. Delicious. Fuck. Lost my train of thought. Here we go. Told you, it's been a long day. Where can I go from here? Oh, yeah. So we're talking about these questionable decisions, right? And it's not just about the questionable decisions that you keep inside yourself. It's also the bullshit detector this you. When you know someone's just talking out of their fucking ass or something doesn't quite make sense, or you know that just there's this incongruence of what's going on, it's referencing what you know, what's contextual to the situation. It's going against that massive database of knowledge that you've got to go, hang on, I think this guy's full of shit, or something's not smelling quite right here. And then hopefully, if you're smart enough, you'll apply that bullshit detector to your own actual bullshit from time to time as well. Now, because of this depth of knowledge in the psyche, right, even the king has to bow, has to counsel with the magician within, because that's where the wisdom, that's where a degree of insight comes from, for that specialist understanding, right? The king, whilst connected to God, acts in the interests of the people in the way of justice and generativity, but the wizard or the magician facilitates that conduit to God and, is the messenger and the counsel, the right-hand man of the king to make the best decisions. So who is this magician in their fullness? What does an empowered magician in your psyche look like? So the empowered magician in his fullness works twofold. There is this pursuit for secret wisdom, for the arcane, that is used to heal and transform others and initiate them into higher capabilities. And then there is also this creation of technology to create solutions that will benefit others. This knower, this deep knower, the pursuer of knowledge, is deeply linked to a Greek concept called gnosis. That's kind of what gnosis, but gnosis, spelled Gnosis. Now, gnosis is defined as the intuitive knowledge of deep spiritual truths. It is, that intuition, that knower, right? You don't, when you believe in God, you don't have to question your belief in God. You know it's there, right? It's that gut. That's the energy of the deep knower. And that deep knower is often reinforced through repetition of knowledge insight that reinforces these perspectives on life that you might have. Now, the pursuit of this gnosis is to attain spiritual enlightenment, is to become one with Source, a higher power, with God, and to connect deeper with the universe and leverage these knowings, again, for the benefit of the people. A great magician is generative, just like a great king is. Now, with this deep knowledge and this deep knowing also comes the energy of the philosopher inside the magician, the introspective development of perspective. That is the person and the element within us that wants to know more about the world than just the shallow material world that exists around us. I think I said shadow, which kind of works too. And this is where I think the stillness in our connection to a higher power comes from. It is that knowing, right? It really puts the know in gnosis, is that, yes, I have this connection to God. I will not be questioned on this. This is unshakable, and I will move in this direction, as I've probably had a lot of runs on the board of God or the higher spirits being on my side and having this knowing align with, real real outcomes in the real world. There we go. But with this pursuit of knowledge and spiritual enlightenment, it doesn't mean that the knowledge that you acquire is just spiritual woo-woo, chakra aligning, sage burning bullshit. It's actually also the energy that causes us to pursue science, to just know deeply about the universe and all its elements, right? It's not just about the ephemeral. I mean, when we use these archetypes that were before what we would probably call modern science and the scientific method, this deep knowing that came from spiritual backgrounds, religious backgrounds, the Buddhists, the Taoists, a lot of what the deep knowings and the spiritual aspects and the dharmas, dharma being the rules and laws of the spirituality, have been said for thousands of years, and we're only really seeing science catch up to a lot of these deep inner knowings that we've been talking about for a very long time. And this is something that I really, really enjoy talking about as well. So one of the great examples that the book uses, that I also like to think about a lot, is the parallels between physics and spirituality, right? This ongoing merger of technical and spiritual, right? Like I just said before, there are so many things that we understand about the universe through historical text, religious texts, that, again, science is just only coming to go, you know what? They might be fucking right here. So, for example, in the spiritual world, in the Eastern philosophies, the Buddhists and the Taoists, they say that everything is connected, that we are all part of one great being. We are indelibly connected to the universe, right? We are all one. Now, in the last 20, 30 years, thanks to quantum theories and particle physics and things like that, we're starting to realize that, fuck, they might be right about this shit. Because in the latest of quantum theory, when it comes to string theory, particle theory, there's plenty of theories out there that I cannot explain because I'm not that much of a nerd. But a lot of them are explaining that in our field of reality, even down to the subatomic level, right, beyond atoms, we can't tell what matter exists below that in the quarks and in the subatomic, where we can't tell that the smallest form in our universe is either a particle or a wave. But what they do know is that these particles or waves all seem to be interconnected in one giant energetic field. Nothing is truly still in the universe, everything vibrates. And it seems like matter is actually just consolidated atoms and bits of these microscopic fields of energy that is bundled together. What does that mean? We could all just be part of one great universal fabric that communicates to each other through vibration. Very similar to what we've been talking about with the Buddhists who say we are all one with the universe and we are fragments of God and of this existence. And therefore, nothing cannot truly be nothing. So far, there is something behind the nothing. Something that really can fuck with your head if you care to really think about it that deeply. But I fucking love that shit. I think it's a lot of fun. So, it may be a more pertinent example of where science and spirituality are starting to converge is the use of plant and psychedelic medicines, right? For thousands of years, in all cultures, tribal and whatnot, plant men, shamans, medicine men have been using psychedelics to some degree to commune with the gods, heal the people, connect deeper on a spiritual and intellectual level. Until probably a few years ago, we used to demonize drugs like MDMA and psilocybin for just being destructive to the human psyche. But now thanks to the latest developments in trauma-informed therapies and psychedelic therapies and in MDMA therapies, we are finding out that these drugs are actually useful to resolving trauma, PTSD, and the human condition. So really, who is leading who here in the knowing versus the thinking of society? And both sides of that coin, the technical and the spiritual, is the realm of the magician in society. So we talked about the knower and the pursuit of this knowledge, this intuitive knowledge within the magician. But the second aspect is the technological aspect of the magician as well. This is where man's pursuit of logic, of process, of growth comes from as well. This is where we love to purvey tools and applied sciences, right? And when technology doesn't mean hardware either. It doesn't necessarily mean computers and whatnot. Technology is defined as anything that progresses efficiencies towards an outcome. Once upon a time, oil was a technology, right? Fire was a technology. The wheel was a technology when we first invented it, right? These transformative progressions in human efficiency. So this is where, in the male psyche, that logical pursuit comes from. The engineer, the tinkerer, the nerd, right? That first monkey back in the day that figured out he can use a stick as a tool. That is all the transmission and the expression of the magician's energy. Now, in today's modern society, we currently live in the age of the magician. We are a technologically driven society creating abundance and wealth through what is effectively magic to the common man, right? This transmission and application of the immaterial, right, data, the internet, right, into businesses, applications. This very podcast you're listening to now is a miracle created by the magician, right? If you think about it, what's happening between you and I right now is you've got me, a magician in a pretty sweet robe, transmitting knowledge that is broadcast through the vibrations of my voice into this little device here, this little bit of technology called a microphone that gets converted into ones and zeros by a protocol that was created by another magician, right? That goes into the internet, this fantastical web of light that's being blasted through glass all over the planet, as well as copper, right? And it converts, these ones and zeros are converted back using these little doohickey devices called a mobile phone or a laptop. And then it converts those zeros into a format that your human body can receive with its ears and resonates with. And hopefully that information, that wisdom, has been transported into your brain, into something that you can then pass on to others as a fact, right? Or as a bit of a conversational tidbit. Oh yeah, I saw this fucking wizard guy on the internet once and he was talking mad shit about the internet being made of glass or something. That is the magic which magicians purvey in modern society. The creator of scale, transformation, application for the good of the people. What's actually missing, though, in the twofold, or what's probably been missing in the modern application of the magician, is the healer, the connection to the subliminal, these applications of the tools to the self to heal and transform yourself and to others. Instead of investing all of this technology into the world for practical and material gain, we've lost that mysticism element of to the day's modern wizard, right? They just get too busy caught up coding or creating the newest app or whatever it is. Magician energy doesn't really ground itself in the ephemeral and the spiritual like it used to because it's too busy creating cool devices and tinkering with shit in the external world. And there's something in the book itself that actually aligned with this, my little point here. And I'm just going to read it out because, yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. And the book says, we believe that the many ways in which the magician has appeared in history and in which he appears among men today are mere fragments of a once whole image. That primordial magician in men has manifested itself most fully in what anthropologists refer to as the shaman. The shaman in traditional societies was the healer, the one who restored life, who found lost souls, who discovered the hidden causes of misfortune. He was the one who restored wholeness and fullness of being to both individuals and communities. Indeed, the magician energy today still has the same ultimate aim. The magician and the shaman, as his fullest human vessel, aims at fullness of being for all things through the compassionate application of knowledge and technology. So, again, yes, there are definitely plenty of people that are creating tools for the better in modern society, applications, there's healthcare technology, but despite all of our modern conveniences and the transformative nature of the internet and the information age, we still have people that live in abject poverty despite all the abundance we have because, unfortunately, the systems that we have created sort of push and, the trickle-down economics doesn't really trickle down, it trickles up into the, pockets of a wealthy 150 magnates around the world. So it's really talking about, yes, we can do so much in the external world, but we still need to use the transformative and healing powers of the shaman and the magician to heal the human condition inside us, right? So we've talked about the magician in his full power, doing cool shit. Where does the magician evolve from? What is the developmental psyche? What is the inner child of the embodied magician? And that would be the precocious child. So according to the book, let's start with what does precocious mean, actually. So precocious means someone demonstrating advanced development and maturity, particularly in children, right? So this is the gifted child, really, which is fucking me to a T, which is why I love the magician, right? You're talking about a kid here that loved to learn, and that's what the precocious child is. The precocious child is the eager learner. He is the kid that asks all the questions and has all the energy to find it out, right? He wants to know the what, the why, the how. He'll often figure things out by himself and wants to share what he's learnt with others. Sound familiar? So, precocious child, they're the child prodigies. They're the origin of curiosity in the world, both the inner world and the outer world. A precocious child wants to know what makes him tick, what motivates him, what motivates others, wants to get as much information of the world as much as possible. Now, precocious children are often both introverted and extroverted. The introversion comes from that deep desire to learn, putting yourself into a corner, digging deep into the books, into the knowledge, really, really getting into the meat of something, and then reflect on it, compute it in his own way, reference it against his own knowledge of the universe, and then eventually their extroversion comes out and there's excitement to share and help others with this information that he's learnt. And again, like I just said, this is me to a fucking T, right? This podcast may as well be called The Precocious Child Tries to Figure Out the Universe 1 Week at a Time. So where does it go wrong for the shadow children? Right? When we get to these active and passive poles, when shit goes awry in the precocious child, what happens? So when we move into the active shadow of the precocious child, we get into the know-it-all trickster psyche. And if it's into the passive element, we get into the dummy psyche. Now, the know-it-all child, he's the kid that wants to use his intellect and to show it off to others to portray power and superiority. You know, he's smart and he knows it and he fucking flaunts it. Now, he, like all the other active shadows that we've talked about so far, there's a degree of cruelty to him. You know, there's this self-aggrandizing and he's disconnected from empathy to others. He's really self-concerned. And this trickster, he's using his skills, his tools, his knowledge to manipulate, right? Not to serve others. Maybe he likes to fuck around with people, play some pranks, and he'll laugh at the misfortunes of these other peoples that he's manipulated because he's outsmarted them and his, cunning plan worked. He wants to win his way, right? And he wants to use all of his little tricks and his shortcuts and all the things he's learnt to get there. The only problem with that is there is this natural justice in the world, and there is this idea of a very strong element of irony that will often outsmart him and trick them into misfortune as well. So, a great example of the know-it-all trickster that sort of came to my mind is this fucking cunt called Martin Shkreli, right? You might remember Martin making the news in probably like 2015. He had this company called Turing Pharmaceuticals, and they found that this organization of his jacked up the price of one of their patented drugs, Daraprim, over 5,000%, from $13.50 to $750 per pill. And that's because Shkreli, who was a bit of a character, bit of a cunning motherfucker, had this plan to obtain medications that had expiring patents but had no generic alternative for people to make. So what they had with that is when they bought it, they put in clauses from the organization that was giving away the medication to restrict supply until it was in their ownership. What would that do? That eventually creates a supply monopoly for the Turing Pharmaceuticals company, and because they've got the monopoly on supply, they can charge whatever the fuck they want. Now, this made the news in like 2015, 2016, because the medication that he was jacking up the price for was used to treat malaria and AIDS. So it's a bit of a sensitive topic there when you're preventing AIDS patients from getting the medication they need. And because Shkreli was the leader and the mastermind of this cunning plan, admittedly, dark but cunning, he was also unapologetic about the fact that his plan worked. He was like, my plan worked, fuck yeah, God bless capitalism, to the victor goes the spoils, and he was largely unapologetic for basically his plan working and sort of sneering at his victims. However, that created a lot of fucking backlash, and then eventually karma got the better of him, and in 2017, Martin Shkreli was sentenced to 7 years in prison and had to pay over $70 million in fines and repayments to the victims who he had ripped off. Right? This is a perfect example of that know-it-all trickster at work. He has his, this highly cunning, hurt child, right? This very smart but hurt initiate magician that manipulated the system unfairly for his favor, put on airs of superiority, and then was struck down by this higher force of justice, kicking him right in the fucking dick. So what about now the dummy? What do we do when we have a passive magician? Well, like other passive magicians, or sorry, passive energies rather, these kids, they're shown to lack a lust for life. They don't show energy. Maybe they're considered dim-witted or not quite there. They seem to exclude themselves from society, from reality a little bit. Maybe they've got difficulty learnings. Maybe they seem a little bit naive. But again, it's that withdrawn aspect of themselves. But what the book also refers to is that this degree of passivity might also be a degree of manipulation itself, where that these dummies are actually going, I'm too good to partake in what's going on right here. I'm too good for this. And therefore they might put on airs of stupidity and really know what's going on. Or potentially they could be just afraid. They could be hurt. And they don't want to show themselves because they feel very vulnerable. And this showing of themselves to the world maybe is more than they can handle at that point in time. So what about what happens when these hurt children, these tricksters and these dummies grow up? What do we have in the mature shadows of the magician? So the themes of manipulation and dullness, they evolve further into the shadow archetypes, with the active shadow being the manipulator and the passive shadow being the innocent one, right? So the manipulator is the dark side of knowledge and technology, right? When they're using what they know for their own gain. Maybe they're withholding information, or they're charging way too much for the information that they contain, right? Even think about the darker side of humanity. Think about all the killing machines we've created for ourselves. Mustard gas, fucking napalm, gas chambers, the nuclear bomb. This is dark magician energy at potentially its worst. But a couple of examples that the book uses about shadow magician energy, this manipulative energy at work, actually refers further to the pharmaceutical industry as a whole, right? Because you think about the pharmaceutical industry, what we understand about them, what we perceive them to be, we think they're a bunch of fucking pricks that charge ridiculous amounts of money to provide well-being to the public, all for, a dollar, all for a bit of money and power. I mean, think about, the ridiculous costs of insulin in the US, for example. Insulin for diabetics is like 7, 8 times the price in America than it is compared to Canada, because Canada has universal health care and the US can jack up the price because it's very hard to get supply anywhere else. If you want to use a more recent example, maybe you want to think about a certain vaccine that was purported to solve a certain fucking virus and didn't really do anything about it. I had to hide my face from the microphone in case the YouTube police get me. Or they could just fucking hear me too, but, I just thought I had to hide it. You never know who's watching. Oh, I know who's watching. It's probably not the cops. But another example that the book uses as an example is the legal industry, right? If you think about the legal industry, you think about lawyers and barristers, and they're all fucking pomp and fucking, oh, we have this knowledge of the law, this codified law that you can't understand, so we'll charge you by the minute to use our skills and our power. And if you don't use it properly, you could go to jail or you could be sued, so you have to pay us a lot of money for this shit. But in the delicious twist of irony, again, the natural justice that occurs in society, the legal industry is now being disrupted by technology and AI. Because what's happening in the legal industry is that most of law runs on precedent. So the application of laws and outcomes to similar cases have to be respected in response to a similar case is currently happening now. I.e., if someone had been charged for manslaughter for a certain thing, then the person that's in the current case from a previous case also has to be charged for manslaughter for the thing if all of the components meet together. I may have botched that explanation. I'm starting to run out of brain. But you get it. It's all precedent, it's all logic. And again, like we've talked about in previous episodes, AI is very good at logic. It's good at logic trees. So if this is all just previously referential data to what laws have applied to certain situations, why do you need some cunt in a fucking white wig? You can just reference the old data related to domestic violence or white collar crimes or whatever it is, see what the precedent is, and that'll give you a good indicator through the AI of how successful your court case would be as well. So, suck shit. I don't know who I was saying suck shit to. I don't mind lawyers, they're all right. Why did I say that? I don't actually believe that at all. I'm getting loopy, folks. It's been a long day. Anywho, now let's talk about the passive side. Right? Let's talk about this innocent one, the pseudo innocent one, really. So they call this in the book the denying innocent one. So evolving from the dummy, this innocent one wants all the glory and all the power of a magician in his fullness, but none of the responsibility. Right? With, like we said, certain, was it a Jedi? Or was it Yoda? I can't tell. But the phrase is, with great power comes great responsibility. That's what I was trying to say. There's a long way around that. You know, when you become this magician, this initiate, this the shaman, the healer, you have the duty of care unto others. You need to be the leader of initiation in guidance to be that embodied magician. But the denying innocent one is in denial of this responsibility, of his potential, and rather just sit on the sidelines and talk shit and be critical of people and, has that victim's mentality on the world. They're going, oh, I couldn't do something negative, or I couldn't do something mean like that. I'm an idiot. I'm adult. Why would I do something like that? Right? Often, these dummies or these innocent ones, they probably are carrying a degree of hurt to the degree where they cannot perceive a fair and just and positive world. They think the world is out to get them all the time. Or at least, they are partaking in a world where they could potentially have a positive impact on it. They're usually just holding these deep degrees of pain, and instead of, embodying themselves because they're restricted by their trauma, they generally just learn enough to get by or get enough to derail other people because of the envy and because of that shadow bullshit or that negativity they're carrying in their heads. They're going, you know what? If this world isn't for me, fuck you. It ain't for you either. But so what do you do when you encounter these dummies, right? You got to be sure, number one, not to play their games. You got to count out this bullshit. If they're saying, "Oh, it's not me," and you probably know it's them, you can't let them slip, because then you let them win. You got to hold these fuckers accountable. But if you have the space and you have the capability, give these people, the space and compassion, and give them that perspective that they desperately need in their lives, right? To think better about themselves and how they can operate and integrate into the world. Because again, if they are, a deeply hurt individual, from my own experience, the degree of the pain and trauma that you've suffered, if you heal that and transform that, alchemize that, again, also alchemy, a pursuit of the magician, transforming the ordinary, the lead, into gold, right? Even talking about alchemy now, alchemy doesn't necessarily have to be about lead or material transformation from lead into gold. Alchemy can be easily defined as anything that you take that's mundane, that's negative, that's painful, and transform it into something beautiful. And that's what we have here, this opportunity for emotional alchemy with others. I found through solving my own bullshit, solving my own trauma and my own pain, alchemizing that into something great, something beautiful, is one of my secret arts, one of my secret capabilities, is being able to leverage my experience, empathize with others about where they are on their journeys, share my perspective, and that allows them to heal and transform and hopefully, enable their highest selves. And that's kind of really what I do with this podcast is I've had these transformations. I'm constantly evolving. And I try and put as much of my learnings and insights and knowledge into the world to give you, dear listener, hopefully the tools and insights to transform your own way and hopefully impact others as well. And that is the power of the true magician, right? To heal, to transform, to create tools, rituals, create sanctity, sacred space, and be a force of healing and transformation in the world by not being subject to material wealth or gain, right? Focusing on values, that inner voice, that connection to the spirits and the universe. That's what I teach here is yes, the material world is important. We live in the physical realm, but most of the answers to the world, to the universe, to yourself is found within that gnosis, within that centering of the self and allowing that energy to permeate through you and acting upon it as well. And on that poignant note, that's the podcast, guys. That is The Magician. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Hope you found that interesting. Again, shout out to this book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. Next week we'll be covering the lover aspect. Ooh, the lover, which will be a lot of fun. That was probably where I got some of my deepest learnings and understandings about myself. So we'll talk about that next week. Again, grab the book, $25 on Amazon. Tell them I sent you. They won't have a fucking clue what you're talking about. If you want to find me, folks, you know where that is. It's on the YouTubes, it's on the internet, it's on the socials, at Jamil J. Raymond everywhere. If you're on the YouTubes, do us a favor, give us a like and a comment. That really bumps the algorithm up and gets more people, the binge thinker, right? A couple more thoughts out into the universe. Besides that, I got nothing to plug besides that. Thank you very much for your time and attention, bingers. Love yous all. See you next week. Ciao for now.